So Ellsberg has made intellectual contributions. He certainly made a major contribution to American history in releasing the Pentagon Papers and putting himself in very serious jeopardy over them. And then he also was targeted by Nixon's plumbers in the Watergate scandal. Remember what plumber means?
They fix leaks.
They fix leaks, exactly. And so anyway, they targeted Ellsberg. So he is an important historical figure. I will also say it is a matter of pride to me that early in our being in the public eye, he began following me on Twitter. And I always felt like, to have a historically important figure like that, somebody with deep courage follow, meant something to me. Yeah. So anyway, I was struck when he announced on Twitter this week, he published a letter that he had delivered to his allies and friends in the
anti-war and anti-nuclear movements.
Right, the anti-war and anti-nuclear movements, that revealed that he has been diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer. Pancreatic cancer, there are a couple kinds, but apparently he has the kind about which there's essentially nothing that can be done and has a very short time horizon. And so, on the one hand, that is tragic. On the other hand, I thought that the grace with which he handled it was so extraordinary that it actually raised some other questions which I think are worth addressing.
I'm going to just share a tiny bit from the first tweet. Which
do you want me to put it up?
You may do that if you like. So this is his first. He says, "I wrote this letter recently to my friends in, as we said, in the anti-war and anti-nuclear movements. I see it's being circulated, so I've decided to share it here. For all of you working on these issues, thank you, and please keep going." So he says what Brett has just described. I'm sorry to report to you that my doctors have given me 3 to 6 months to live. Of course, they emphasize that everyone's case is individual. It might be more or less. I have chosen not to do chemotherapy, which offers no promise, and I have assurance of great hospice care when needed. Please know, right now, I am not in any physical pain, and in fact, after my hip replacement surgery in late 2021, I feel better physically than I have in years. Moreover, my cardiologist has given me license to abandon my salt-free diet of the last 6 years. This has improved my quality of life dramatically, the pleasure of eating my former favorite foods, and my energy level is high. So, I don't know how much you wanted me to share of this, but
he goes on. I think that's probably sufficient to get the gist of it. So this brought a number of things to mind. One, he reveals he is 90.
He'll be 92 on April 7th.
He's closing in on 92. And so what is one to make of a terminal diagnosis at 92? I mean, he's past the life expectancy, certainly for somebody born in 31. All right. Anyway, he has lived a full life. He's lived an extraordinary life, and he's made real contributions. And he now finds himself faced with the end of his life, and he is feeling good. And this put me in mind of a couple things. One, it put me in mind of the extraordinary year that we had with your father after his first of 2 heart attacks. The second one took his life. The first one, basically, not to go back into the story which we've talked about elsewhere, but was so severe that the paramedics told us that he was gone. Upon seeing our children present, continued to work on him, and then revised their diagnosis later, and we did not know that he would come out of the coma that they put him into. They cooled him down. But
so just briefly, you came to the door with our then 7 and 5-year-old would have been sons, and the paramedics had just told my mother and me that he was gone. They'd been working on him for 20 minutes. His heart had been stopped for at least that long. And they started working on him again upon seeing basically the next generation who were there, who loved their grandfather deeply. And they saved his life. And we had another year with him.
Somehow
I guess younger than that. It was 11 years ago. So that would have been, they were younger. They were 6 and 4, 2 little boys at the door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in any case, whatever the particulars, he came back. He was shaken by the experience, but he was himself. And the year that we had, and it was really almost exactly a year, was a tremendous blessing because he knew the fragile state he was in, and we all knew the fragile state that he was in. And so many of the things that needed to be said got said, and, it was absent that year would have been a very different loss, I think. So anyway, I'm, thinking there are a lot worse things to happen to you than to get a diagnosis that gives you 3 to 6 months to close out your business. And the fact is, at that age, you kind of got to expect it's coming at some point. So, so anyway, kudos to Daniel for confronting it this way. It also put me in mind of this, the Norm Macdonald story, which I find Norm Macdonald, who I was also honored to be followed by. Norm Macdonald had terminal cancer, and he did something very unusual, which is he decided to tell no one. And in so doing, he preserved the end of his life so that it was not overrun by everybody every minute that they were talking to him, thinking, I'm talking to somebody who's about to disappear on me. And it struck me as unusual, but very much something that somebody should entertain. And so anyway, I think the way Daniel Ellsberg is handling this is a model of a way to deal with such a thing that's marvelous. He's not giving himself false hope. He's eating salt, and the dangers of salt have been overrated. So it's probably about time that he took up eating salt again. But in any case, it's a profound moment for all of us, and that we get to share the end of his life with him, I think is meaningful. It's a great way for a historical figure to put a bookend on his own legacy.
Yeah. And
I had one more thing I wanted to add in, as long as we're talking about death and sort of what the adult viewpoint on it might be. This is not particularly related to Ellsberg, but it's a thought that I've had increasingly, and I think it belongs on the table because, frankly, I think it might have the potential to save some lives. So anyway, I'm open to pushback on this, but here's the thought. The thought has to do with the mental process that I think leads many people who are in great pain to end their lives. And what I realized is that I hadn't heard the following thing, but I'm almost certain within bounds that it's true, which is that death can very definitely end suffering, but it cannot bring relief. And I suspect that many people who end their lives are not doing so simply to end a torment that will never stop, right? Obviously, if you are in terrible pain and there's no hope of recovering, then ending suffering may be a perfectly valid thing to need and to want. But I believe many people who do this are probably pursuing a relief that our minds tell us would be there, and logically just simply can't. And so, in any case, I think that
spell out spell out why logically relief can't come with death.
Because relief is a somatic experience. It's a cognitive experience, and to the extent that your cognition comes to an end, there is no relief to be had. And there is one caveat I will put on this, which is, and I believe many people who end their own lives convince themselves quite falsely that their life is burdensome on others. And what they don't realize is that in most people's cases, the loss of somebody, especially the traumatic loss to suicide, is extremely burdensome. It's a burden that loved ones often don't get past. But the caveat is in my own case, if my continued existence was more of a burden to my family than my exit, and there was no chance that it was going to turn around, right? Then I don't have any reason to want to continue, and their relief could be something. But for most people, the idea that I just need some relief from this suffering, that's a non sequitur in the case of death, especially by one's own hand. And I thought it was worth just simply expressing that, in the hope that maybe someone or multiple people contemplating their own predicament might realize that actually the way they'd been thinking of it was wrong, and that the best thing to do is to confront the suffering itself and not take up arms against it, as Shakespeare put it.
Yeah. Well, there's no real good segue to the next thing.
Apologies.
No? Oh, we put it in this.
I got the segue.
Okay.
Sorry. I hate to have done this to you, Daniel, because I've now taken that piece, which is isolated from your story, which triggered me to explore it. But I did want to say to Daniel Ellsberg, as an American, a deeply heartfelt thank you for what you've done, and I hope what time you have left is glorious and fulfilling, and that all the things that need to be said get said. So in any case, thank you.